Okay, so we're gonna jump right into it for this week's update. Let me go ahead and update our overlay. Um, okay, so one of the things that we set out to do over the last week was essentially finishing up elements of the operator that were not done yet. Mind you, there's one bug that's still remaining repairing relating to the repair tool that's been put on the back burner for the time being while we're working on some RTS UI issues and getting the UI skinned. A considerable amount of the time of this week was redoing the entire RTS UI and just making implementing the mockups we've been showing over the past couple of weeks. So here, let me go ahead and bring up my share screen, and we're gonna go through some of those changes and just kind of outline what we've been doing and the direction that we're going into Wednesday. It's very important for us to get to a point in the next 24 hours, barring going into Monday, to finish up the RTS UI. So then that way we can skin the main menu, the pause screen, and the just general like option screens and get those online and get them implemented. And then while that's being done, we have someone working on the operator UI. So then that's fleshed out and that's done as well. And then we can successfully leave phase one at that point and go into what I will be discussing towards the end of this stream. In summary, for the poll that we did a couple days ago, we'll be talking about that as well. So the first thing you're gonna see on this new UI is how we basically laid out the top right to the bottom left in terms of the framing. So we went in the direction of having these set buttons. The landscape, we took it out of the airstrike area and we made it more of a dedicated area for just being able to clear out a region and being able to just, you know, essentially access it very quickly. Now it's still binded to the question mark key, which is the question mark slash forward slash key, and that allows you to do it as well. There is a visual bug that we have to fix related to LOD where if you zoom out, it does stop rendering. But let's see. Yeah, so it basically, we'll have to fix that. We're going to fix that going into Monday that I just ran into earlier this week. So that is on our list and we are aware of that. And it's something we're going to be fixing relating to the trace distance of that component. One of the other things we did is we got the night vision in, and that was also implemented over the course of the week. We got the UI skinning. Um, the filter and all that is being worked on right now with some other remaining elements. And if I do the groups, you'll see that we have the groups where it shows the people in the group. And then if you want to see the information, you can. And I'm just making those groups via control 1, control 2, control 3, like what's been accustomed in other RTS games. They just destroy the LCAC, so that's just kind of gone now at this point. One of the things that we've been doing a lot of playtests on the public Discord, and we got it in so then that way, as one of the other things that were on our list was making it to where when anyone did the slow-mo in a co-op or single-player session, everyone would hear the time dilation change. You have no idea how often we'd be playing a game and someone would be like, did it crash? Like, what's going on? And it's like, oh, well, someone paused it, kind of deal. So that sound effect was put back in based off of the legacy stuff. And this is the direction that we're going in for the UI. You can drag and drop based off of reorganizing your squads. I see a visual. Yeah, there's a visual bug there where it's not updating the number, so we'll have to fix that. Again, this UI is still much in the works in terms of implementation, bug fixing, and basically just kind of getting everything working. But just keep in mind, we're actively hunting down the bugs with the UI and resolving them as they're reported to us. One of the other things that was key to us was taking out the reliance on the pop-ups in the world and making them everything centralized, the details panel itself, like being able to click on the icon here and that will jump you to the location. So if I select him and then I click on this icon, it will jump me to him. One of the other things that we did is here, let me stop the play session. And I'm going to go into, I can do this map because we're already loaded in the memory. I'm going to build a barracks real quickly, and I'm going to demonstrate some of the other changes that got in relation to multi-unit selection and how we perceive this is more user-friendly and clean than previous iterations of how we did the UI, where it was a little too much information. We kind of were inspired from like Jurassic World in terms of basically when they were hunting the Indominus Rex, those little UI panels that they had for the previous UI. I thought those were really cool, but we were never really able to kind of like make it work, and it was more information overload. So one of the things that we did was we did this over here on the bottom right. This was kind of like our way of taking what we learned and reconceptualizing it in an approach that we felt was streamlined and made it to where at a glance you get all the information you need of your units in that selection. If you click on the box, it will jump you to that unit and keep the selection. Well, if you don't double click. And one of the other things is that if I double click this unit and I build, let's say, a generator, and then I build a barracks, I've been working on a new system because Krieg, Hawkins, Quively, and a couple other people that are like the more builders, we call them the Bob the Builders on the Discord, is basically they've been making it their life fucking mission to break the building system every week. So I spent about a day or so this week going in and retooling the building system and making it a little bit more adaptable to the pain and suffering that they put into. And the idea is that we wrote more of a dynamic system where buildings generate a diamond-based system with preset offsets, and then units evaluate can they reach that location. In the goal of the effort of making it to where units don't do weird decision making, where you're building a wall and they might be on one side of the wall, but then they'll decide to go to the other side of the wall for some reason. There's still some oddities here where like they still go through the side of an object. I'm gonna have to work on the edge cases and just keep tweaking this up. But it's the other design goal of this solution or this implementation over the course of the week was to try and bring down the amount of clipping and overlapping that occurs during the course of the game, where you'll get like 80 billion units that are just inside of each other. I'm gonna have to keep tuning it because it really, really has issues when it comes to the walls that I'm gonna have to tweak in terms of like refining it a little bit more. I feel like this solution, we play tested it for a couple hours yesterday, about 3 or 4 hours yesterday, trying to figure out where we could break it and how well it was working. And it's going to be interesting putting this out into the wild going into today and, well, technically yesterday, to basically just get some feedback and see what issues present themselves so that we can adequately wrap that up in a timely fashion. One of the other things which I'll show, I'm going to just go ahead and put my units in God mode. God mode. God mode. God mode. So one of the other things that we set out to do was right here. You can see that when you're highlighting these units, it does not show the weapon widgets above their head anymore. So how you would access bulk buying and weapon buying as a whole is by clicking on their ammo box in a bulk selection, the glowing box here. And then at that point, it would look at whatever unit that you clicked on. So if you clicked on an assault, it would cluster all of those assaults into the bulk buy. And then it would be like, oh, you must want to buy 5 M4s for your 5 assaults. Or you can buy them individually just by clicking on buy, buy, buy. And then the other thing was the individual. If you want to just customize the pistol, it does that directly. If you want to just customize the primary, it does that as well. So then the idea is a little more streamlined of getting you to where you need to go in a timely fashion was the concept behind it. And streamlining the UI to just make it a little more fleshed out and a little more lived in, because like not as early accessy, we'll call it. So you can see this is the evolution of just kind of the direction we've been going in with the UI mockups. Something's changed between implementation and actual like well, concepting, and then implementation. So it's one of those things where like you figure we made a couple of deviations from the mockups because we felt that it was a little more streamlined to do it in this manner. And I'm curious the feedback and the response we'll get online in terms of just basically what people like and what they don't like going ahead. Um, Let me go ahead and show the other elements actually too. So the kills are here. The XP is this bar for the current level. The level is here. It shows the group that they're in, which this guy is in group one. By default, everyone's in group one, even though they don't show up here. That's a visual bug we'll have to fix. But the idea is it probably should just say like 0 or something there. And then the class icon, class name, and what kind of role they are in infantry, vehicles, helicopters, X, Y, and Z. Um, we got the barrack selection back in, where when you click on it, it shows and it cycles through your barracks in the map, and it jumps your camera to it. I mentioned this briefly before, but we did put the LCAC in as a recruitment station where you can build engineers and operators until the point where it gets destroyed as a it's basically like a little compromise for people that did want to jump in and just test the mechanics very quickly. They could. If I go to the barracks, you'll also see how we went about doing the UI, and this is going to trickle into every aspect of design. In terms of the design philosophy for UI, is going to be never putting pop-ups or windows in the world, but presenting them in the confines of the details panel. The only time that we will break that design rule is when it comes to zone cards, like how you were able to click on them for civilian evacuation. That will be the only time that we break that rule. But for having abilities, having options, having any kind of interoperability outside of the zone cards is going to be the details panel for doing the civilian evacuation and so on and so forth. And like I mentioned previously, the mock-up showed it, but we did get it implemented. Is that you figure like the barracks here shows the power required, which is 100 it's taking away. And then it shows the current zone power. It shows kills in the case of it's a turret. And then it shows the current health. And if you want to dock this, you can. And then it's out of sight, out of mind. You don't have to see it. So that was another thing that we got set up going into this week, just to kind of streamline the UI and get it to a point where we're happy with it and we can move on successfully from leaving phase one. One of the other elements was, let me bring up these mock-ups here so you guys can kind of see what's coming down the pipe going into Monday. Hold on. Let me find that little doohickey. Right, here it is. Let me go ahead and bring that over. Here we are. So you can see that right now as it stands, we are missing the idle engineer button. We're working out with the conceptors of where to put the operator management window. That's going to most likely go somewhere here from the menu. And then Derek has to work on the dots, pro and cons. And then we're waiting. This icon just came in, and we're getting rid of that stupid little dot. Well, actually, Derek already did it. But we're going to rearrange this top right area to be in alignment with the mockup up here. Cache, GNA, population, and then when the next reinforcement plane comes by. So just keep in mind that's something else that we're going to be doing is just kind of giving that a proper icon and just kind of stylizing it up there and giving it its own unique color. And it's not going to be yellow in the final rendition going into Monday. Let's see, is there anything else? Yeah, we're very close. We're very close to the point of the UI being done. And with the shift to pandemic mode from the poll, which I'll talk about in just a bit, we're going to jump in and dissect the elements that aren't in, which is the global population bar here, and then the news ticker up here. Now, I do want to go out there and say that it's not in any of these mockups, but Derek is also working on an activity feed for co-op games. So then that way you would know who's spending all of your goddamn money and whatnot. So we're working that out of having an activity feed or a log going into Monday, Tuesday, because ultimately we're aiming to be done with the UI around Wednesday. So then at that point, we can say phase one is over, and now we're starting production on the helicopters and so on and so forth. So, and we're going to get into that because there's a lot to unpack there from the poll. Um, so yeah, just keep in mind, I'm going to put this build up. There's another build that I'm cooking right now that's going to go live after the Cirque broadcast. And it's going to have another round of suite of fixes and improvements and changes. It brings in the infection bars for the units. And it basically just, it adds another layer of changes that we've done going into Friday night. So just be aware of that for the UI, is that that's just something that's going to be going on. And then slowly but surely, as we work through phase two, which is a new one, you'll see the diplomacy and the objectives come back online. Visual options is obviously one of the other things that we're working through right now as we speak of, and that's something that's going to be a holdover going into Monday. Um, so what I want to do now is I want to basically, let me see, let me check my notes here. Let me see if I can find an infected. So one of the things that we're doing is we're giving the infected their own little logo. Like they have that little icon placeholder here. It says infantry and it says infected here. It does work the same way for them, but you can click on them and it'll steady the camera to them. And you're going to see like descriptions being filled in here. You'll be able to track if infected have killed anyone, how many they have killed. You'll be able to track, like they're getting their own emblem design and whatnot. Because even though if it's not a thing right now, the whole point of the rebuild was building the foundation in a way where we can expand in the future to making other factions playable, like the infected long term. I don't have a deadline for that, but the system is built in a way where it's very flexible and modular to support that with some minor tweaks and alterations here over the course of like a month or so. But that's just too much to bite off more than we can chew at this point. Okay, so let me check my notes and then we're going to move into the next part, which would be, let me make sure I didn't neglect anything. Hold on. Yeah, that pretty much sums it up. So we're going to move on to some of the level design progress that we've had. And then we're going to wrap around to that poll towards the end for the Q&A before I open it up. So one of the important decisions that we prototyped in the co-op test map for the last couple of months was adding in the ability for units to climb. And that's been a big thing for me since the game's inception, is adding that level of verticality. So then that way you can have entire fobs or bases or operations where you are hiding out of sight, out of mind on rooftops, or running teams or fobs on the tops of rooftops. And we tested the concept of it in the other map, and now that's coming over based off of the things that we've learned and the things that we want to make look more visually polished instead of seeming roughy like we had in Legacy. So an example would be is that over the course of the last week or so, our talented level designer Ephraim has been going through and just sprucing the place up, adding hatches, adding doors, adding little like maintenance areas that you can get up to. So you can enter through the door on the floor, and then come out here or there, or any other number of the areas around here. Like these, these are all new, and these have just been added in as he's kind of just going through and auditing the structures and setting up just, okay, like if you want to come on this building, it doesn't require a little bird. You can actually enter through one of the doors and come out the rooftop. And if you want to see that, you can look at one of the previous podcasts, or you can just play the current co-op build, go onto a rooftop in the co-op test map, and they will climb. The spitters will run up the wall, and the standard infected will go through a door and then come out the top rooftop within about 8 to 7 seconds. So that's been one of the other initiatives that he's been kind of going through to kind of work from, okay, this is nice that we have these ugly white boxes that represent doors and like exit points and entry points and like whatnot. But now we need to kind of get into something that's more presentable and something that's more finalized, which is what this is here. And then this will bake into all other content, after it in terms of like pandemic and everything else. Because like I was talking to a couple of people on the public Discord, and this is one of the auxiliary areas that he's working on right now, is that if you think about it in the confines of civilian evacuation, this school campus is perfect. When you add in the verticality that I'm talking about, you can have guard towers on the roofs. You can have people and sniper teams and heavies on the roofs. You can have helipads and evacuation points. Clear out the inner concave and make that like half a military base, half a civilian evacuation with processing. So the idea is with that level of verticality, it gives you a lot more tools to get around and build the kind of bases and the kind of like and create the kind of situations that you want in terms of like, okay, I can use the natural borders of how this level is laid out, like these walls here, to basically corral infected, but also the civilians. So that's something that we're looking at and we're working actively towards going into next week is to basically streamline that process a little bit more, make it a little bit easier for level designers to use it like in the real world because the co-op test map implementation is a little too rough and it does need a little bit of refinement before we mass produce it per se into maps like the Half Moon Bay map, which would be used for Horde, but it would also be used for the pandemic variation of it that we're planning for now. So let's see. Is there anything else? I mean, it's there. You guys, this is all on the co-op. This is all on Cirque Public HQ as of the build last night for like these. So I don't have to show you guys every variation. You guys could go in and explore the map at your own leisure and see what's changed over the course of the last week. Um, and we're getting to a point where that is concluding, and then he will wrap up the last structures that I was talking about in these auxiliary side areas. And then at that point, he'll be moving over to working on converting over this map for a pandemic variation. And then at that point, they'll work on converting over the other Treasure Island maps to a pandemic version based off of the results of the poll. Let me just sip my coffee here. So what we're going to do now is we're going to load over to the hub, and I will show you guys the progress that the main menu has had. And I want to float a couple of ideas based off of discussions that I've had talking to people on the public Discord and talking to people on Steam. So let me go ahead and I'm going to hit the play button. It's just easier to judge it from the RTS, the operator perspective. Is that Dimitri has been going through and just kind of fleshing out and putting together the library, which is the area that we move the operators to start in by default. And then essentially just kind of going through and building the side areas and just putting in the small little details here and there. I'm still not completely convinced on the width of the hallways. So I'll probably go back and forth with him for another couple of days once he gets a little bit more of the sub detail in. You can see that you can walk through these areas now that collision was fixed. And he's working on the cages. He's working on the sub details. You can see that he's been putting in these, which is basically where the guards would patrol with the guns. Is that they'd have like a little rope or whatever, and they'd basically just walk along the rafters and make sure everyone's like, sleeping or whatever, or no one's escaped. And just kind of putting in like that little fencing here, getting the framing, getting everything set up to the point where it's one-to-one to the real life, real world version of Alcatraz. And just to hit upon a couple of points of criticism that I have heard in the last 24 hours for the hub was this was designed for several reasons. One, campaign. Two, having a hub, making Cirque a character that you can explore and learn and be able to kind of get an appreciation for what they're doing as a whole on the island. Three, making it to where it was more immersive. So it's one of those things where I would want to make it more like XCOM, where it's like a hub or a world. Even if we ended up making it to where there were preset cameras it switches to, because that's one of the things that we were looking at talking to people on Discord, is a lot of people are alienated by the fact that you spawn in as the operator, or they think that somehow we've lost our identity, that we are no longer making an RTS game, or any other number of things, which is just not true at all. So it's one of the things where we're looking at potentially having it to where you can, when you first spawn into the hub, you make a preference of, I just want to have a set camera, like an XCOM where it just preset positions. And then if you want to go and load in as an operator, you can press a button and you can basically switch to operator mode to be able to explore the island, whether you're staging on a like on a mission for like multiplayer or whether you're doing it in the confines of single player. So that is something that we are looking at to lower that point of confusion for people there because like I don't want to deal with people thinking that we're an operator game now. We're a third person throwaway game for some reason. I don't understand that notion. Operators have always been another way of playing the game, another way of engaging with your friends, a way of us to try and do something new and to experiment. And I know that we have gotten some flack for that, for basically trying to do the operators and trying to polish them since we put them in 2022. Um, but yeah, it's one of those things where like that is kind of what we're looking at in terms of a compromise to basically do that and to lay it over in terms of explaining to people that like no, we're still an RTS game. I still have 1,000 hours on Company Heroes across all my games. Like RTS games. This game is foremost an RTS game at the end of the day, and that the operator elements are just icing on the cake to bring in your non RTS friends to the fold and to give you that level of immersion. And if you want, tactical control for commanding armies on the ground, like Arma or Zeus, or like a couple other games like Call to Arms, I think it is. Um, so yeah, I just want to throw that spiel out there.
Yeah.
What are you gonna say, Krieg?
I was just saying, yeah, Men of War, Call to Arms.
Yes. So, because we've been getting destroyed on the forums for that, but I just want to make that clear. We'll take the mixed review status. We'll take the hit. It is what it is. We're still going to work on the game. We're still working through the woes of rebuilding the entire game because we deleted everything. We started over. Like, by no intents and purposes is any of the code from Legacy brought over. We took the processes, we took the concept of the game, and we remade it because just to reiterate this, because I'm sure there's people from Steam that are here listening on YouTube and on Discord and are going to listen and post, is that we took what the game released as in 2020 is not in any shape, manner, or form of what we got to in 2024 at its peak of implementation, features, mechanics. And the problem is that over the course of those 4 years, we learned the hard way through repetition and through playtesting of what people wanted and what they didn't want. What we thought were good ideas, but they weren't good ideas. Listening to the community and addressing concerns and issues, and then those basically facilitated into the experimental build of the last snapshot of what we want the game to be. But not, it's not ideal in terms of like what people have brought up recently of like evacuation, pathfinding, performance. So it's one of those things where like, okay, we now know what people want. We know how they want the game to play. Do we try and salvage that version, or do we take that full well knowing the expectations and what people want in their game and facilitate that into a rebuild that would be cleaner, more efficient, and allow us to build in the direction that we've learned over the last 3 or 4 years of like I was talking to I think Krieg or Durvar about this recently a week day ago, and the game would not be what it was in its current state had it just been no actual back and forth, no actual communication, collaboration, experimentation. And I understand the argument of people just want it done. People want us to just move on. They want their mechanic done. They want their feature done. But at the end of the day, we had to go through all those trials and tribulations to learn and to figure out what people want, how they want it to play, and where their priorities are, if that makes any sense, as we're just kind of fleshing out the game and building it. Because there's a lot of mechanics and systems that did not exist in 2021. 2020, and then those were built on and changed and manipulated, and we changed this and we changed that. And now that we have a better understanding of what the expectations are, that is the core principle driving the rebuild, where it's like, okay, we know what people want for the evacuation. We know what people want or expectations in terms of performance. We know what people want for the pathfinding and what we've learned and how we should refactor or retool some systems going into the rebuild. Like what I mentioned earlier for the building system that Krieg, Hawkins, and Quivley have made their personal life mission to break weekly, give me a shit ton of bug reports, and then I come back and we make it a game of can they break it again? And it's a fun little back and forth there to innovate and fix the game. So I just want to stress that at the end of the day, we do care and we are working through the failures of what we ran into on experimental and taking those concepts, those mechanics, those systems, that feedback and rolling it in to our decision making for the phase 1 rebuild going into phase 2. If we didn't care, we wouldn't have done that poll. If we didn't care, we wouldn't post, we wouldn't talk, we wouldn't have these podcasts. We just ghost you, like most of the other early access games do, when they just are making that much money, when they aren't actually willing to put the time and effort in and communicate. So I just want to throw that out there for some of the more hyperbolic, extreme responses that we've gotten in the last 24 hours on Steam. So beyond that, though, you guys have spoken. The poll has been out for a good couple of days. It's not unanimously in the favor of not doing any more horde content and pushing in the direction of doing the main mode, which is fine. Like you figure that's why we put it out there. That's why we wanted to make sure that we were in the right mindset of what people wanted. In our mind, we felt like Pandemic would be better with the doctrines and the helicopters and the DNA research, but people bought the game for Pandemic, so I can understand their reasoning when it comes to Horde's nice. It's like a dessert, but it's not the main course. So to us, it's a course correction of like, okay, we built the framework in phase 1. We have the formations, we have the pathfinding, we have optimization does need to be tooled up a little bit going into next Tuesday, Wednesday, which is what I'm going to be working on with network optimization. But we've built a framework now based off of phase 1 where we can go in either or direction, and based off of the results, it's the helicopters, and then it's Pandemic. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to outline what does that entail and what are we doing to just clear the air, make sure everyone's on the same page, and make sure there are no more misconceptions in terms of we don't care, we're not doing this, we are a scam game, any other number of things that I've heard over the last 24 hours. So one of the things that I'm going to bring up my list because I just got to have a meeting with Derek right before this. So we came down with the list, and the basic list was this. Custom game options has been heavily requested for Pandemic mode for years. And not just what we had in Legacy, but taking it a couple of steps further in interoperability and customization. Now, I take an effort to sit in the public Discord and talk to people. They share games, we have a good time. Krieg showed me Jurassic World Evolution 2, where basically you could change the custom game options live while you're playing, so it was easier to fine-tune the gameplay and change things while things are on the fly. Now that's something that I want to implement personally going into the custom game options this time around. So we're going to take it from a top-down perspective of essentially making it to where we start the helicopters around next Wednesday to Thursday. That will take us approximately 1 day and change. Sorry, not day. 1 week and change. I'm retarded. 1 week and change. So that would be to clear it. It would be the Little Bird. It'd be the VTOL. It'd be the Blackhawk. It'd be the Apache. It'd be the Scout drone. With all of their weapon packages from experimental that were already made. And all we need to do is patch some systems, update the garrison system, update the turret system, and then bring those in over the first 2 or 3 days, going into Wednesday, going into Friday to Saturday night of next week. And then after that, we'd start bringing in the helicopters, setting up the garrison systems, making sure they can land, making some improvements to their flying mechanics and their flying AI, which is going to be what we will need y'all's help for. To see if you run into any issues or any outlier problems that we don't find when we're doing our testing. Then at that point, around next Wednesday going into the Friday, we will be moving into doing pandemic. That will start with the foundation, which is basically the infection ticking, the infection as a whole, and just setting it up so we can go into a test map on Half Moon Bay or a simpler map and just set up the spreading and the ticking and make sure it's all replicating. Then put in the custom game options where basically like you can change the health of the infected, the speed of the infected, what type of infected are in the game, at what time do they come in, and we're open to suggestions for that. So when we get to that point in the next 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, give or take, that would be when you would basically like be like, hey, I like these, but I'd like this, or that, so I could get my mini modding in terms of like I want all of the infected to walk. I want no spitters, no blow up guys, no juggernauts, no leviathans, no birds. I want only infected. That's it. And I want them to start showing up after day 2 or 3 or 4. So I have enough time to build. And then you can change those options live in the game options for the host and the host only. So those are things that we're looking at from the results of the poll. Now, in our mind, going into this month, look at my sheet here. And yeah, in our mind, going into this month, we think it is a realistic goal to effectively have pandemic playable by the end of the month. Now, it's only going to be a half of the list that was in that Steam post, but it will be playable and it will be something that you guys can at least tangibly see progress is being made. We are listening to what you guys are saying in terms of your feedback. We actually give a shit. Ripley's believe it or not. So just keep in mind, those are the things that we're working towards. Now, what I'm going to do is let me also bring up my notes for what me and Derek discussed. I'm going to put that in the channel. I'm going to put that in the podcast channel in written form. And I'm going to put that verbally again on voice. It's going to be the custom game options. It'll be the alternate start scenario, which is basically no Chelsea, no lieutenants, and it's just a normal zombie outbreak for those people that have been asking for that for 3 years. And then do the Chelsea and her base lieutenant AI and do the Juggernaut. The Chelsea Lieutenant AI and Juggernaut is what's going to round out the end of this month. And then we do the save system for pandemic and pandemic only. Horde is not meant to have a save system. I got that question on YouTube. I want to address that question. Is that Horde mode is meant to be a start to end, one wave to wave 50, and then it's over, it goes through, and that's it. So this is our compromise to just kind of pivot based off of feedback from y'all in terms of basically in the poll. So what I want to do is I want to check one more thing, and then I'm going to open it up for questions on the YouTubes and on Discord for people that want to ask on voice or people that want to ask on text. Give me 1 second to just make sure I'm not breezing over any technical notes that my programmer gave me. No. Okay. Yeah. And it's also key to keep in mind that a lot of the foundational systems for pandemic were implemented in Horde or implemented in phase 1 as a precursor to that, like the zone cards and whatnot, for like showing the name of a zone and whatnot. So, and then the garrison towers, the guard towers are actually a precursor to vehicles and helicopters. And the turrets are a precursor to the Abrams, the Bradleys, and the Little Birds because their turrets or weapons are autonomously firing units. So we have been working in that direction to basically all the time from an RTS standpoint to satisfy the expectations that the community has as a whole. Okay, so what I want to do now is open it up for questions on the YouTubes and on the Discord to see if there's anything anyone wants to bring up. And just kind of go from there because I need to write patch notes for today's update as well. I don't want to drag us out too long, but today's broadcast is going to be pretty short. So questions. What do people have for questions for me for anything that we've discussed, anything that was mentioned in the poll, X, Y, and Z? So Discord or YouTube, feel free to hit me with whatever you guys got.
I would like to say something just before any
Hit
of the
me with it.
questions come in. Yeah, so for those of you who have been able to attend playtests and actually put your voice across to Dark and the other devs who have been in the voice chats or even in text channels in the Discord and on the forums, like it's pretty evident that any of us who have attended and gave feedback and whatnot have really affected the direction of the game and how the team has been reacting to it. Like they've been taking in all the feedback. It's completely understandable why people may like take an extreme note and say what they say on the forums or even in the Discord because people don't have the time to constantly check in. But you can make a difference. Like if you have something that you feel strongly about for the game, and it's something that isn't like insane to do or a completely different direction to what the team is aiming for, you can definitely put it across. And if people agree with you in the community, the dev team will 100% hear you out. So whether it be on the Steam forums or even in the Discord here, um, just post it through or even start a conversation, join a
Oh
voice
yeah, if you see
channel.
me on a voice channel, you can always join. People do it all the time. We'll talk for hours. So just keep in mind, I'm very chill when it comes to that, to having a discussion. I think people are like, think I'm an asshole or something. I'm not sure, but yeah. Um,
You do sound like one, but I promise
what?
he's a nice guy. He's extremely transparent. You do sound
What do you
like.
mean? I do?
No, you're nice, Doc. Don't worry about it.
Okay, I'll go and cry.
There you go.
Okay,
Got a question.
so
Go
literally
ahead.
1984 asked, will the riot shields ever get a full rework, animations, use, etc.? Always thought they were cool but useless when they were implemented. Completely agree with you. Let me handle that when we get to civilian evacuation. Their primary purpose was for that, and then their auxiliary was for doing the for stopping like spitter projectiles and whatnot. I am here on you on that one, but let me get pandemic in as a whole. Not bite off more than I can chew, because we have a lot in the retainer that we can pull up from previous content, like what you're suggesting. My utmost priority right now is getting the base framework of pandemic established and working. And then at that point, I can go back and I can look at line items like what you're mentioning and start to facilitate them or re implement them in a more meaningful way, like what you're suggesting, literally. Is that acceptable? Okay. What else do we have for questions?
I don't think YouTube pulled up this yet.
I guess I'll fill the air while I wait. So there's people, also people writing. So I want to clear something up too while we're here waiting. Is that the horde mode was not made to supplant the pandemic, but to, in our mind, this is our standpoint, give something to the community that they could tangibly play while we were working through the rebuild, and to give them something to see the progress is being made. That at some point or another, I guess that was taken from a standpoint of we are not doing a pandemic anymore, and that pandemic is no longer the mainline offering of the game, and that we are now like misadvertising the game. I'm not sure, but it's one of those things where again, I want to clarify this: is that that was done from a standpoint of compromise. We need to rebuild the game. It'd be way much too much technical depth to do the rebuild of the core, which a lot of people have a problem with, like pathfinding, formations, and performance, and doing pandemic at the same time. And we felt, from a design standpoint and from giving something back to the community, that they can tangibly play something without it just being a dirty, ugly dev map, was to facilitate that by adding by creating the horde mode, so that way you guys have something to play. So I do want to address that as well, because I'm going to be linking this video in that thread from today on Steam, as and linking to this time code so they can see what's being discussed, just to clear the air in terms of miscommunication there. So let's see what we got there. For operators, i.e., vehicles use is
Yeah.
planned. What about multiplayer vehicle use? Will there be like a gunner in a driver's seat? Will everything be controlled by one player at a time? So we're talking vehicles for the operator, and when it comes down to that, they would be using the same system that Fortnite uses in terms of like the vehicles. So you'll be able to drive them. You'll be able to use the turrets. Now, when it comes to having multiple people in a vehicle to do roles, right now we prototyped that in Legacy. We had it to where if you got into a striker, you could drive it, and then your AI would shoot the gun for you. And then if you press the key, it would turn off the AI, and you'd be able to manually shoot like in Battlefield. And we built it after Battlefield, or we mirrored it after Battlefield in terms of its approach. Now, when it comes back in terms of the rebuild, I don't see why we can't do what you're suggesting, but I think. mm, Let me get back to you on that second part about squad based vehicles. I think the base implementation would be the default person can drive and shoot, and everyone else can just sit in the car and be a passenger. But I'm not opposed to it, but I don't want to make a decision in this very moment for that. Because my base plan was just that, and then looking into that long term. Um, let's see what else we have for questions. Anyone else have any questions or things they want to add on voice? It's so quiet today.
Negative. Yeah, so quite.
I
I would say as well,
uh,
actually, from because like I've been in RTS
yeah,
mainly, but throughout the entirety of like the rebuild, and there's quite a few of us as well. I think a lot of people get intimidated. They don't want to check into the chat when there's like 12 people in there. Um, there is like five or six, maybe even 10 people who are being operators, but that's because it was fresh
sure.
and new to them. Um, at the end of the day, it is a hero unit. It's just a take on a modern form of like RTS playing where you can have your friends beat down on the actual ground or even yourself, and then you know you or others can be building bases, forward operating positions, checkpoints, and so forth, and managing large movements of units
I think
around
that's where it gets. I
maps
think
to
that's
look
where it
bigger.
gets fucking crazy if you
Yeah,
think about it, because we've been building it up in pandemic to facilitate the base, the foundation, like I've said, and then transitioning the pandemic. I don't think they realize how crazy that's going to be. Where like you figure you can have
it's gonna be
RTS
beautiful.
players on the ground coordinating a fob or a base, doing evacuation, doing civilian evacuation. Then you can have operators, whether they be an RTS or TPS, running out, doing missions, clearing out zones, running AI kill teams, and basically coordinating to the RTS players to let them know, hey, we have a breach in like section B7. Can we get like a Chinook with a shit ton of guys over here? Can you add them to my squad so I can command them and clear out the neighborhood while the RTS players on the team are building a base?
It's really gonna
Or
add a lot to the
yeah, it's the
environment
immersion
immersion.
aspect of it, and that was the whole
100%.
point of this mechanic in this
Yeah,
system was to bring it home in terms of basically like something that's never been seen before, something that's never been attempted before, in terms of like the infection mechanics with the RTS, with the TPS, where you have a unified war. Like an actual, like, it's chaos. You have to manage teams. Like when we were playing Ready or Not last night, and all the cross communication and all the things that are going on of like people having to communicate, that's fun. Like I want to have that in Cepheus, whether it be the RTS, whether it be the RTS to the TPS, is to have that level of communication being required in large scale operations when you have cross map pushes going on, when you have you know, an actual subdivision of teams of players, whether it be like your two buddies over here are playing RTS and they're building up that fob, and then these two are doing war crimes in fucking Coastal City, and then these three are over here. Just two of them are playing an RTS, or one or two of them are playing an operator. They're in their own little fire team commanding AI, and they're assigned to an RTS player that's basically doing the things they can't do and just helping them out, kind of deal. So yeah, All right, let me see what Awesome King VJC is asking. He said he came in pretty late, so he's not sure what's been said already. But would multiplayer involve different player factions in the future? No. Ultimately, when it comes down to it, our long-term plans for the game is Cirque, Infected, Fenrir. Those are the three factions that we're seeing as primary factions. Anyone that is like the police, the anarchists, civilian groups are groups that you ally with. You would recruit out of their ranks, their vehicles, or their weapons, or their infantry, and they are cannon fodder. They fit a role. They supplement your forces in places in ways that you can't sometimes by having a cheap indispensable force, you know. But they feel like niches, or like the anarchists would have a suicide bomber. The police would have your beat cop, your SWAT marksman, your police car, your SWAT van. Like there are small little things where they can challenge you here and there if you piss them off enough, but they're still not on the same level as the American government in terms of like having an actual full branch's backing. So that's the kind of direction that we're going in when it comes to the factions. Um, yeah. And then let me see. Misu asks, will pandemic difficulty scale based on the number of players? Also, is pandemic friendly to solo players, small player groups of 2 to 3? So yes, we tested this in the horde mode by having it to where the more players that are in a session, the more lanes that open. And the same concept would apply to pandemic mode in terms of we would apply multipliers to base settings to make it to where the infection starts sooner, X, Y, and Z. Now, that's why earlier in the discussion, I highlighted that I want to do, like, once we have the base system in, and we have like everything functional, we'd go in the direction of having it to where it would what am I thinking of? It would basically allow you to custom tune it live and in the custom game options. So if you don't personally agree with our balance choices, you want to make the game slower, you want to make the game faster, you will have that capability via how fast does it tick inside of a zone? How fast does a zone go from green to red? How fast does it go from orange to red? So in that way, you get to cater the experience to your whims. Does that make sense? And I think that is the most meaningful direction that we can take based off of talking to people over the years. Is like it would bridge the gap of like basic difficulty versus director's cut. Maybe we're a dick and we make we made that Derek and we make Krieg make his own difficulty and we call it the Krieg contingency just to troll him. And then he can just go in there and make it really
Might
fucking
only get hate so much.
insufferable. Because like
You've already
yeah,
hated
everyone hated your
difficulty.
difficulty. I had to
We've
bring
sent
that
this
down.
down.
I was getting comments and DMs every day. Um, let's see. Would everyone have one giant pool of money to pull from, or would you ever have their own pool of money? So, Team Koala, what you're suggesting is already in via the control modes. So, when you make a multiplayer session, there's an icon on the bottom right that allows you to set up unit control and money allocation, like how it's like distributed. Every time someone gets money, it's split. You could also send money around. So when the host changes that mode, it takes the money away from everyone, and then they can basically divvy out money to players via the gift feature. So that is in, and basically you'll have to give it a try, I suppose, when it's on more of the pandemic centric mode, or you're welcome to try it out in the horde mode. And then basically from there, tell me what you think. Yeah, what literally said. Any other questions that we have?
By the way, you are welcome if you're in the Discord podcast call. You can
Yeah, you have
request to
a mic, you can
speak,
talk.
and we'll try to do it vocally.
I don't know if most people know how to do that, but it's at the bottom center. It's like the little raise hand feature.
Yeah, it's just the little wave icon.
All right, I hate you too, Silver. All right, Dark number 2. All right, literally is typing another question, and then we'll just kind of go from there.
Yeah, you're more than welcome, literally. Oh, there
So
you go.
Misu asked, do we
Misu.
plan on adding special buildings to the map that offer bonuses, hospital, police stations, etc.? That was one of the last things that we were working on before we cut the plug on Legacy Experimental. When it returns, I can't give you an ETA, but it is something that we've discussed and something we've talked about and we want to do long term. Just right now, it's a good idea. It's on a wish list. And that's another reason why there's random police stations and more hospitals that were added to the legacy maps that are all over the place to build in that direction. On this, will there be more? Oh, sorry. Literally asked on this, will there be more places than the little money buildings worth going for? Other capture points. That goes into strategic resources, in my opinion, from what Misu was suggesting. Is that I feel like ultimately Cirque is there to clear out the infection and to pacify the threat. They don't care about as much about holding down the zone as much as basically just clearing out the vectors and quarantining parts that have been contaminated, like from the green to the yellow to the red. So they get money from killing the infected. They get money from setting up supply lines via the socks, and they get money from getting these civilians out, which is going to be severely nerfed in terms of the amount of money you do get. Now, um, he asked, "What about the military bases? Can we get access to the missile silos if we hold it?" Nike missile base is what you're talking about, I assume, on Angel Island.
Yeah, it's the only one
It's
present.
a good idea. I'm gonna give it to you. Just can't do it now, but I'll put it on a wish list. Like I'm certainly not against that idea.
I would say, if anything, probably on like compliance rather than a
Yeah.
strat resource, since like you said, Cirque's entire narrative is to
Yeah.
get you all out,
Well,
like, just as it
let
would be in
me
real life.
let me circle around on that with you
And
in a month or two. I'll tell you what. Like you figure, let me cook. Let me get over this next 2 or 3 weeks hurdle, and then at the end of the month, going into next month, let's reevaluate that in terms of basically if it feels right for strategic resources. Because at this point, I am very, very scrutinizing any new mechanic or system that gets added that's not already on the subset of what's an experimental as it stands right now. So if it's not an experimental, some of these ideas are great, but they have to wait until I just get what's already planned and on the docket and that are priorities based off of what's been discussed on that Steam thread and just what I already have in my list. So I'm going to save those. I definitely want you to advocate for those in the future. But for right now, no. But yeah. And then the AC 130 stuff is going to be something in Doctrine, which will be phase 3 based off the results of the poll. And here, yeah.
um, yeah, Misu asked, any idea to add defensive buildings that are manned by AI, bunkers, AT positions, MG nest, etc.?
Hold on. Let me think about that. So, hold on. Let me open those pictures you're talking about. Those are static defenses that are already in the map that you're suggesting? Okay. Let me think about that. I can't make a decision at this time, but I will put that on a wish list because that is to me is okay. So in 1.4, there's a line item called like world events and just kind of adding more dynamism to the world. I feel like that would be better suited in there. So then that way, if we were to do it, it would have like a whole line item associated with it instead of just like a thing here and there. But I'm not against it. I do like the idea, the concept of it. So I'm gonna actually show the poll results. So if you look at my screen, you could you can see that update. Um, Here's the results of the poll. If you haven't voted yet, I would recommend that you do. So I'm going to be reading through these down here later on, and I'll be exporting it into an Excel sheet. But you can kind of see what people have been talking about, the suggestions they've been getting, and I just have to go through it and pull it all and just go through all that. So, but it's unanimously at this point just pandemic and just getting that situated, um, and just co-op. A lot of it people are just saying they want co-op done with pandemic, and that is their wet dream, I guess you can say. Um, Now, when it comes to what you're saying for the static defenses, I'm gonna write that down as a note, and I can come back to that in the future potentially. It's not a bad idea. I think you're still typing, so I'll give it a moment. Okay, I'm gonna save that in a Trello card on my. Oh, I didn't mean to open it on the stream. I'm sorry, but I'm gonna save that link and then I will put that under a wish list section on our roadmap, and it's something we can potentially look into long term because it is a neat concept or an idea, but for right now it's just not in the scope of everything else that's going on. I would say just kind of give that some time for us to kind of work through these woes of just getting pandemic back online because I personally can't wait until the point where we get the custom game settings in. So then that way you can change them live and in the session, and we can get people that are sharing those online. That was always a design goal of having the custom game settings in Legacy, is that they were any files that were created dynamically, and they were very easy to share and give to each other. So that at that point you could be like, okay, like I want to make a really hard challenge mode that is basically like 28 weeks later, or you could make something like Dawn of the Dead, where they only walk and then double their health or whatever. I want to hit on those points first, build up the foundation again in this rebuild, and then I can look into these things as auxiliary items beyond that. But yeah, no, I totally get it. Um, yeah, I'm gonna be playing the shit out of the Battlefield 6 beta. When does that go live, by the way? Is it open beta the 7th? Oh man. Yeah, I'm gonna be dead that weekend, boys. If you guys are all playing it, you guys are welcome. We're gonna be on the public Discord, so if anyone wants to play the Battlefield 7 beta with us, you're welcome to. We actually are playing Ready or Not later tonight for funsies with like four other people technically. So again, we do play games, we do chill, and you're welcome to always partake and just hang out with us on the public Discord. Um, let's see. Okay, so let me look for any other questions, and then we'll get up to a wrapping point because I got to go do these patch notes. Let me see. And then I think before I put out those patch notes, I'm going to do one more shadow patch that fixes the issue I showed you guys at the beginning of the stream, which was the bulldozer tool not working when you zoom out to an extreme distance. I'll fix that, do a shadow patch, then put out the patch notes for y'all, and then I'll go and play ready or not. Actually, retraction. Does anyone here want to help record a new playtest stream? I need to put up a new one on the Steam store page. I need to put a new one up on the YouTube. So if anyone does want to help playtest and can record their screen to kind of help me just kind of update the content of the state of the game, let me know in general comms and tag me. And yeah, I think Ford said he might help, and then Silver and a couple other people yesterday, but I'll have to see if they still can. And I know Quigley might help. I don't know, but the more the merrier. To get some more people in, play the game, have a good time, talk about the game, and just shoot the shit. Um, yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So I'm gonna wrap it up there. I'll be in general comm, so if you guys want to come and chill and talk about the game or whatever, or people that are really posting this on Steam want to pop in, have a conversation later tonight, you guys are welcome to. I have like 3 other people that I'm talking to from Steam and Discord later tonight. They'll be popping in and out of the rooms, I'm sure. They want to just have a quick chit chat from what they discussed previously with me. Um, Again, thank you guys for coming. We appreciate the patience and the time of day you've given us. We are working diligently to bring this home in terms of basically the progress and just addressing all the concerns and issues you guys have brought to mind. Um, if you want to consider supporting development, you're welcome to check out our Patreon, check out one of our support packs on Steam, or maybe buy the book on Amazon. But anything helps, and thank you guys so much for giving us the opportunity to, get this done. And I'll be in general com, so anyone that